in their so-called free market anyway. Doc, thank you very much for your time and good morning to you.
Morning.
Dr. Justice Salifu is a management and organization expert, also lectures at Lakeside University. First, I am sure you've been observing the tussle between the minister at DSTV. What are observations? Let's start from there.
Yes, I've been following whatever is going on. I have been advocating for price controls, not just to control it by fixing it, but find a way to regulate prices. Because the private sector is usually driven by free market, and many people subscribe to the idea that we should leave everything to the private sector, and then the free market should fix prices. But the free market doesn't know morality. It doesn't have morality in it. So it fixes it, and that can put the consumer at a disadvantage. So the minister's intervention is very important and necessary, because if you don't do that, you will now be able to, allow the free market to work effectively. When the free market operates without regulation, what it means is also is that it affects the economy in a way. Now, macroeconomic environment is good. The consumer needs to benefit from that. And without such intervention, we will not be able to achieve that. So I think I'm on the side of Sam George, supporting the idea that the prices should come down. In the U.S., what they do is, apart from government control of these things, passing price gouging laws, because price gouging laws are well enforced. So consumers are not taken advantage of. And also there are mitigating programs. When you look at every corporation, what you want to do is to grow your customer base. And to do that, you need to introduce some programs that can mitigate the effects of high prices. And I don't see most of the companies doing that. DSTV, I checked, they don't have many of those. So Sam George's intervention is very fair, and we should extend it to other products like rent and other things.
A few things, though. DSTV seems to be suggesting that the macroeconomic environment is still challenging. Do they have a point?
Well, I don't understand what they mean by challenging, because if you see cost of production go down, and many things that have happened since the beginning of this year shows that the macroeconomic environment is very conducive for good pricing. The consumers must also have a way of benefiting and celebrating it. Because look at inflation, it has gone down. Interest rates are going down. Interest rates affect factors of production. So definitely it's going to go down. And if you don't have any program to support the poor, they won't benefit from that. And look at the cases that has been heavily cited, other countries, Nigeria and other places. The reason the DSTV is using to justify it by saying that the number of customers, that doesn't make sense, because you don't price things according to number of customers. You rather price it to get more customers. And it would have been a good corporate decision if they had reduced their prices, because that can help them to get more customers and rather expand jobs, rather than, talking about if you keep it, if you reduce the prices, then it's going to affect the, employment of, people. So I think the macroeconomic environment from where I sit is not going to change anytime soon. And when it changes, then they have justification to increase the prices. But at this point, wherever they are putting out there is not good enough to justify them keeping the high prices.
But there are those who also point out that we are always on the international stage asking people to come into Ghana and invest, and the stance taken by the minister might discourage such kind of investment coming into Ghana.
Every country do have some level of intervention when things are not going right, because the consumer must be protected. It's the government's job to do that. They also benefit from government protection, because you look at electricity, cost of electricity and other things is going to go down because of the government effort. You have PRUs that regulate energy, utility prices. So anytime it's down, it affects whatever they use to produce their services. So in terms of investors, wherever investors are going, they also know that the price mechanism, the free market price mechanism is not always moral. So they factor that into their corporate decisions.
As we speak, the Dstv seems to be suggesting that it will be difficult for them to lower prices at this time. They said they made an alternative proposal to the minister. The minister says that proposal that they put on the table is that, well, they don't send their revenue. They can agree not to send their revenues to their mother company. And that is the proposal they have, alternative proposal they are making to the minister. Is that tenable?
Well, that's very internal. It's up to them to do whatever they want. But the truth is that you have to regulate prices to make sure that the economy maintains level of sanity. If you don't, then it means people can just do whatever they want. In Ghana, we leave everything to the textbook. We think that once free market system says that, sellers should fix the price. What about the consumers? If US were part of US I live, we had the Comcast and then we had Verizon. These are the major companies that provide, services similar to Dstv. And what they even do, at some point, they allow the customers to negotiate their prices. So when they fix the subscription, you might be paying different subscription from me because I negotiated better. So the price, free market system advocate that there must be negotiations. There must be bargain on. But in this case, Dstv doesn't even have a system where you can negotiate the price. You fix it and impose it on the consumer. And that is not good for the economy. And if we don't begin to do that, then it means the consumers will always be prey on. Look at rent, look at other things, and whenever we see all these figures, macroeconomic environment improve, it doesn't reflect mostly in the lives of ordinary people. Why? Because we assume that the market players will do the right thing, but they will never do it. And at the end of the day, it becomes a problem to, consumers.
And that takes us, in fact, I'm going back to what you said from the very beginning about you always advocating for price control. And I want you to explain the difference between some level of price control and price gouging. Exactly how do those work?
Well, price gouging is always what you expect from sellers or companies. Because, for example, if the cost of factors of production go down, consumers will keep their price. The sellers will keep their price. And when it goes, it increases. They pass it on to consumers. They would never touch their profit, the part of, their profit that can also go down if they wish. So at the end of the day, the consumer becomes a victim. That means the consumer has been price gouged. Why? Because the element of increase that has been introduced is going to affect the consumer. So normally the law says that you can't do that. Rather, don't pass it to the consumer. Make sure that you reduce your profit. Whatever you can do to reduce your profit to keep the consumer satisfied and then protected. So the laws are price gouging laws. What it does when it's enforced, it tries to bring sanity and bring equity, because if you leave the sellers, what they'll basically do is to pass the element of increase to the consumers, and that can actually even make people drop out of the market. And when you make corporate decisions, you have to factor all these things into that. So price gouging laws, one of the things Kamala Harris proposed was to do it on a larger scale. And if you follow the news, New York currently, that's what is going on. Because there's this guy, Zoran Montani. I think he's one of the leading candidates. He's been advocating for even open grocery stores to help the poor. And he's the one that is leading in the post to become New York's mayor. Because the people are tired of the idea that we should leave everything to the, price mechanism. And the price mechanism is always going to do not always do what we expect, depending on the circumstance under which it's operating. So there's always a need for price gouging laws to be introduced. And then when it's enforced, it brings sanity and then protect the consumer from sellers who will prey on them. You look at rent. Rent is charged in dollars in Ghana. And the consumer is at the mercy of those who rent, because you don't have a way of controlling what the sellers can do or what, landlords can do. So we need to have a regulatory board, and the regulatory board will always review this thing, not only on case by case basis, but to set the standard. If you look at after the Enron case, there were a lot of reforms in many corporations. They came out with the 70 Oxley, which regulates corporations now. So through that, they regulate the CEO pay. The CEO pay cannot go beyond certain levels. Although private sector culture is always, a free market enterprise always need free pricing. When the free market price on the, free pricing, so that the seller and the buyer will negotiate. But in certain situations, you have to intervene to make sure it works effectively. Because if you assume that it's going to work effectively, it may not do so. And your government is the only body that can protect the consumer. And setting up a body to do the control will help bring sanity to the market.
Well, and I was asking my last resource person about compromises. Ultimately, this is a company that has perhaps has a lot of size. In terms of size, one of the biggest companies on the African continent. But they are going up against someone who has at least power to regulate the activities in Ghana, at least. Now, what do you think will be the best compromise position for the two? And who should be at least pushing for that compromise?
Yeah, Sam George is a lawmaker. I think one thing he can also do is just not to solve the problem one time. He should institutionalize the solution by advocating. Let's get a law on price gouging so we can make sure that we protect consumers through that. And even if we don't set up agencies, I can just go and file a lawsuit against the company based on the law that has been passed. But for now, St. George should not compromise. DSTV, their service is luxury. It's not something, ordinary people will, be craving. It's not like a medical service. So if DSTV will not provide that service, then it means it has created a market vacancy for other companies to come in. So I think he should stand his ground and make sure that they comply with they also give something substantial, if not even the 30%, but they should come up with something that can help the consumer. And for me, it's going to also help them in terms of growing their customer base. Because how many Ghanaians can afford the service of DSTV? Most people can't. And when you don't factor all these things into your corporate decisions, it's going to also affect your growth. So I think Sam George should stand his ground, but DSTV should come up with more, because following the back and forth, I'm beginning to see that the corporation DSTV doesn't have very strong reasons to keep the prices the way it is right now.
Thank you. Thank you very much for speaking to us.
You're welcome.
He's proposing a much more holistic solution that Sam George should take advantage of the fact that he's also a lawmaker and push for a situation in which the Ghanaian system where anybody can set any price. So they said, oh, things are becoming expensive on the market too. So Kenke moves from 2 cities, all of a sudden it's at 7. And it never calms down. That we need to get to a point where there has to be price control. So there has to be price gouging laws. Ensure that you're not going over and above the conditions, because everything is mathematics. Or SMI line. So you are buying corn, you are buying water. So let's say you are using gas. You are going to repair Ginkgo. You are buying the husk of corn that you used to tie it in. So there are many things you are buying. So what does the math say? When you add up your costs and you look at the amount of Ginkgo you've been able to produce with the materials you've bought, what is the math telling you? Ultimately, what are you putting on it? So everything is mathematics. That's why sometimes when we go to school, they say math is hard. Oh, math is not hard. It's just that the way people prep your mind for it. But most of the things you apply in a business. So the question is it's not really about, and the reason we're treating this thing today is not about DSTV, because many people really don't. But the bigger issue of pricing in Ghana that we need to deal with.
Big.
It's a bigger. See, you can criticize Sam George for it, but we all know Sam George. Everybody has the approach. You have your approach. I have my approach. When he fights, that's why he calls himself the lion. He calls himself Dzata, because when he is coming at you, he's coming with full force and will attack till he prevails. That is why he calls himself Dzata. He's saying that when I am fighting you, I'll attack until I prevail or you prevail. It must be someone must come out of this the victor. That's why he calls himself Dzata. So that's his approach. The question is whether I agree with what he's doing. I agree completely that there's a need for the people who we put in office to protect the Ghanaian. Business interests have been protected by our politicians for way too long. Every time they bow to the business pockets, there needs to be a point at which our politicians say no. Or SMI lie. That at some point, people have to say no, not in the interest of the business. We all want to establish businesses. Everybody wants to be a businessman. Everyone wants to make money. But we must make money in a regulated manner, in the interest of the people. That's why we have agreed to all this. If not, then what is the use of people sitting in office if they cannot guarantee you reduced prices, better conditions of service, better conditions of living, to the point that your salary just needs, even if they increase your salary by, at some point, even if they increase your salary by 100%, to still not buy anything? How is that possible? So at some point, whilst you're working on reducing and bettering the macroeconomic environment, we should see it reflect in the way in which prices are set in this economy, because it's becoming too much. It's becoming too much in this country. And we thank God that this thing has brought up the discussion. Somebody was saying that, I think it was Abdul Hamid, who was posted on Facebook that the people who sell catfish for 200 Ghana are shady.